allow time for questions from our committee members. So with that, then we will open the hearing on Senate Bill 394, requiring the use of age verification technology to permit access to internet websites containing material that is harmful to minors. And we'll first have a bill brief from the reviser, Mr. Thompson.
All right. Thank you, Madam Chair. Good morning, committee. Jason Thompson, Office of Reviser of Statutes. You have the bill brief in the packet for SB 394. This is a bill that requires the use of age verification technology to permit access to internet websites containing material that is harmful to minors. The bill creates one new section of law. And I go through each of the subsections in the brief, and I'll just kind of hit some of the highlights here in the overview. So subsection A is the provision that's going to require any commercial entity that knowingly shares or distributes material that is harmful to minors on a website, and such material appears on 25% or more of the web pages viewed on such website in any calendar month, or knowingly hosts such website, they're going to be required to verify that any person attempting to access the website who is a resident of Kansas or is located in Kansas at the time of the attempted access is 18 years of age or older. It would be a violation of the section to allow a person to access these websites without verifying that the person is 18 years of age or older. The bill provides a couple of ways that age verification can be conducted. There on page 1 in lines 16 through 20, a couple of options that can be used to verify age. Subsection B then gets into a person who was able to access a website without verifying their age in violation of this section would be able to report that violation to the Attorney General. And the Attorney General then has investigative roles and can bring an action for injunctive relief to enjoin these continuing violations. And they can also seek a civil penalty that's provided there in subsection B. Subsection C and D then get into a violation of the section being considered an unconscionable act or practice under the Kansas Consumer Protection Act. And for purposes of that act, we create, just as a matter of law, that the person alleging the violation will be deemed a consumer, and the commercial entity violating the act will be deemed a supplier, and you don't actually have to show a consumer transaction. It's just assumed as a matter of law that that act will apply, and this is an unconscionable act or practice that can be enforced under that act. Subsection E then provides that a parent or legal guardian of a minor who was able to access a website without verifying that minor's age is in violation of this section and can bring a private cause of action against the commercial entity for that violation. They can receive actual damages or statutory damages and reasonable attorney fees and costs. And then subsection F provides that commercial entities or third parties that perform the age verification that's required by the section shall not retain any identifying information of the individual after access has been granted to the website. If that information is retained, they are liable to the individual for any damages that might result from that retention, including potentially reasonable attorney fees. Subsection G then provides that nothing in this section is construed to impose an obligation or liability on any internet service provider or on the user of an interactive computer service. It's a duty on the folks who are knowingly sharing or distributing the material, or the folks that are knowingly maintaining the websites, as it describes in subsection A. Subsection H then gives you all the definitions you need for this section. And subsection I is a severability clause, so anything that might need to be severed could be severed potentially by a court if any part is invalid, or and the rest can remain without it. And then lastly, it would take effect on July 1st, publication in the statute book. I'll stand for questions.
Thank you. So section 1 is the substance of the bill, and would this become part of the Kansas Consumer Protection Act?
Madam Chair, that's a good question. The section does not have a specific clause that says it is part of the Consumer Protection Act. So essentially it's left to our office to assign it a place in the code. This is deemed a violation of the Consumer Protection Act under certain circumstances, so it might find its way with a couple others that are similar. That would be KSA 50-6, 139 and 6, 141, which deal with identity theft and identity fraud and unlicensed conduct as a bail enforcement agent. So we do have a couple examples where we use that same language, and we did place those at the end of the Consumer Protection Act, but this doesn't require it. And I can't say for sure that that's where our editor of statutes, our reviser of statutes, my boss, would decide to place it ultimately.
Thank you. Committee, other questions for the reviser? Not seeing any. Thank you. We do have on our agenda 7 identified in-person conferees, so want to give everyone equal time and have time for questions from committee. So we're going to ask conferees to please limit their testimony to 3 minutes. And do remember that we have your written testimony, so we can certainly refer to that as well. But if you can keep it to 3 minutes and listen for the timer, that would be very helpful. Thank you. With that, then, we will invite proponent Brittany Jones, Director of Policy and Engagement for Kansas Family Voice. Please introduce yourself and welcome to committee.
Is this working? Okay. Thank you, committee, for having me today. I'm Brittany Jones. I am the Director of Policy and Engagement for Kansas Family Voice. We are a organization that works to promote families, to protect marriage, and to protect religious freedom across our state. And so today we are strong proponents of SB 394 because of its ability to age gate certain content, so to protect children from this very harmful content that has been recognized to be massively detrimental to their health and to their growth. We believe that children should be valued and should be protected so that they can unleash their greatest potential on our society and on our state. And we believe that as the internet has grown, so has the technology that can protect children on the internet. And unfortunately, we have been unable to enact laws that would actually protect them on the internet thus far. So we believe that this bill is all about protecting kids online. It's all about their health. And that's what we should be focusing on as we discuss this issue. So I will keep my comments brief. There is a lot of information in my testimony, as well as others' testimony, about the harmful effects of pornography on children. Especially on children as their brains are developing. It really does harm their ability to develop healthy relationships, to develop a healthy understanding of the world as they are learning and growing, and that plasticity of their mind is being impacted by this technology. We know that 3/4 of children are stumbling onto pornography by the time they are 17. Most of that as young as, the majority of them are finding it as young as 12 years old, which is just absolutely just an incredible number and figure to look at. And now we do know, if we're going to look at the legal side of things, I'm going to shift and look at the legal side of things a little bit. We do know that there have been court cases on this issue. Those court cases were more than 20 years ago. For reference, I was in pre-K when many of these court cases were being heard. So I do highly think I think it's high time that the court reconsider some of these cases, along with the growth in technology, along with the growth in the pornography industry and its impacts on children. I'm happy to discuss some of the details of those cases, but I do believe that those court cases, those rulings clearly said that, we all agree that pornography is harmful to children. We all agree that, something needs to be done. However, the court stated at those points that age verification was not actually meeting the mark at that point, and that the court at one point even said that, children aren't stumbling onto this. Like, it's that the internet is not so invasive in children's home. That is very different in 2024. The internet is a huge part of every family's home and a huge part of every child's life. And so it is up to this body to protect children from this content and to make sure that they're protected. So I ask that you support this bill. Thank you. And I stand open for questions at the appropriate time. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And committee, we will reserve questions till we hear from all the proponent conferees. Next, we will hear from Dr. Kevin Vance, Director, Center for Constitutional Liberty, Benedictine College. Please introduce yourself and welcome to committee. Okay, committee, Dr. Vance is written only. His material is in your packet then. Next, we will hear from Chuck Weber, Executive Director, Kansas Catholic Conference. Please introduce yourself and welcome to committee.
Good morning. Thank you, Chair, members of the committee. Appreciate you allowing me a few minutes here just to chat about SB 394. My name is Chuck Weber. I'm the Executive Director of the Kansas Catholic Conference. We're the public policy voice for the bishops of the Catholic bishops of Kansas. The reason that we feel so strongly about this is protection of the family and children is a core value of the Catholic Church. And I want to say also that parents are the first and best protectors of their family, of their children. So when I had 5 kids growing up, I mean, I don't expect the state to compel my children to drive slow, but we have laws governing that. I don't expect my children, I expect my children not to buy alcohol and consume alcohol before they're of age, but we have laws in place. But first and foremost, we believe that this is a responsibility of parents to protect their children. But we need some help from the state, from the government. There's a compelling interest. That's a legal term, I know, but there is a compelling interest for the state to help protect our children from the scourge of pornography. My colleague, Ms. Jones, is more of the head. I'm kind of the heart of as I think about this, but she can explain more about the technical aspects of it. But the fact is not in dispute that pornography is addictive, it's destructive, particularly for children. And so this is common sense legislation that I would urge you to strongly consider and pass. I just want to say in 2017, I was a member of the Kansas House of Representatives, and I carried a resolution at that time that basically said that pornography was a public health hazard. So we had a vigorous debate one day over on the House floor, and that resolution passed. I think it was 122 or 3-1. And I just want to say that part of that resolution that was also passed in the Senate, by the way, the exact same language. It said, be it further resolved that we recognize the need for additional education, prevention, research, and policy change at the community and societal levels, and we urge this chamber and other governing bodies to take appropriate steps to ensure progress is made. So there's sort of a baseline there for the House and Senate, the sense of the House and the Senate going back not too many years, and I believe that that's still in place. I want to conclude with, I'm a big free speech guy. I'm a former news reporter. A previous life, I actually covered the Capitol for KWCH-TV down in Wichita as an adjunct professor of journalism at Wichita State University. I follow, the Marion County newspaper, why don't you call it, brouhaha scandal. We have a reporter from the Wall Street Journal that's in custody right now over in Russia. There was another reporter that actually from the Wall Street Journal, Jerry Seib, a Kansas native who was detained by the country of Iran way back when. I covered that story. So I'm a big free speech guy. This is not about free speech. We cannot yell fire in a crowded theater. And that's in essence what happens when we have these phones that we all carry around. Pornography is right at the tip of the fingers of not just us, but more importantly and specifically to today for our children. And I think we have the technology, and if we have the will, we can help prevent this scourge from really enveloping our children. So I thank you for your time, and I would stand for questions at the appropriate time.
Thank you. Next, we will hear from Ian Corby, Executive Director, the Age Verification Providers Association, and he's joining us on WebEx. So please introduce yourself and welcome to committee. Not on WebEx. So we will circle back to him, give him time to join, and then we will hear from Joseph Cohn, Public Policy Director for Family Policy Alliance, who's also joining us on WebEx. So please introduce yourself and welcome to committee.
Thank you, Madam Chair and members of the committee. I just want to confirm you can hear me.
We can, yes.
Thank you very much. My name is Joseph Combe. I'm an attorney and a director of public policy for Family Policy Alliance. We are a nonprofit organization based in Colorado Springs, which focuses on advancing family values and religious freedom through legislation across the nation. The bill presented today prevents minors from encountering inappropriate online material through age verification requirements. As a result, I'm asking you to vote yes on the bill. With the rise of technology, minors have nearly unlimited access to adult websites, many of which contain inappropriate and pornographic material. In fact, studies show that by age 17, about 75% of adolescents have been exposed to pornography. This statistic is very alarming, and it is made possible by the fact that many, if not most, of these websites are accessible without age verification or parental permission. Now, parents have the right and ultimate responsibility of directing the upbringing of their children. As a result, age verification requirements for adult websites are necessary to prevent adolescents from accessing inappropriate and pornographic material. These bills help put parents back in the rightful place of controlling whether and how their children engage with dangerous pornographic material online, and research has proven that pornography is dangerous to children and harms them. In fact, studies show that 88.2% of pornographic videos depict sexual violence, while roughly 48% of these same videos include some kind of verbal abuse. Furthermore, studies also show that 53% of male adolescents and 39% of female adolescents actually believe the lie that pornography is an accurate portrayal of sex. Thus, adolescents are learning about sexuality from a perspective which portrays sex as physical abuse instead of receiving sex education from a parent or guardian. In addition, studies reveal that out of those individuals who have been exposed to pornography, 58% access the material unintentionally. Resulting from that, adolescents are becoming addicted to pornography through interaction with certain websites that parental involvement could have prevented. Therefore, the age verification requirements in the bill before you today are necessary to prevent those minors from encountering inappropriate and pornographic material and to empower parents to protect their kids from such exposure. Finally, right now, the average age of first exposure to pornography is between the ages of 7 and 13 years old. Therefore, it is necessary for legislation to help restore parental rights and to protect their children from pornography. And not only does pornography harm children's mental well-being, there is also a strong correlation between pornography, human trafficking, and sexual abuse. In fact, research reveals that it is impossible to determine which pornographic materials portray consensual sex, as many adult sites contain explicit videos and images of adults and minors who have not consented to filming such content. Now, some people have argued against a measure like this bill, claiming that the government should stay out of matters relating to children's online access and that the decision ultimately belongs to parents. We wholeheartedly affirm that decisions pertaining to a child's time online do belong to parents. This is why I strongly urge you to support this bill. The age verification requirements will place these choices and others back into the hands of parents across Kansas. And Kansas is not the first state to propose such age verification bills. Other states have done this. Parental rights are the backbone of the family, and one of parental rights is is required to protect child's innocence. This bill does that by reestablishing the role of parents in their children's consumption of online material. So I strongly urge you to support the bill, and I will stand by for questions when the time is right. Thank you.
Thank you. And we will now circle back to see if Ian Corby has joined us on WebEx. He has, so please introduce yourself and welcome to committee. And please limit your testimony to 3 minutes if you weren't online to hear that before. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Madam Chairman. I've just had the link through, so sorry for being late. We're the Global Trade Association for Age Verification Providers. We have 25 members. We've been in existence for 5 years, and in that time, our membership has grown from 6 to 25. And we've done over 1 billion age checks online in the time that we've been in existence through our members. So my first point to the committee is that online age verification is not a new science. It's nothing to be scared of. It is certainly something that is in wide use, originally for things like access to adult content, but increasingly now in Europe, it's required to protect children's data or for the purchases of age-restricted goods such as alcohol or tobacco. We've had an opportunity to look at the bill before this committee, and we think it's made a lot of improvements on some of the other bills seeking to do similar things in other states. In particular, it sort of learned the lessons from some of the constitutional challenges where we actually gave testimony ourselves in court, in federal court, to defend some of those pieces of legislation. And we think the bill is a better bill in your state than some of the others that we have seen. We can do age verification through a number of means. We either use a specific date of birth, which we get from an identity document, which we can scan in, or in some places we can read a chip to get the information directly from the document. And then we'll do a liveness check to make sure that the person who is claiming to own that document is actually the valid user. Or we can also do facial age estimation, which is a new science which allows us to estimate the age of users to within a year and a half of their real age. And the reason we exist as a sector is to create an independent third party that can be trusted to do that process, and then to discard any personal data so it's not retained by anybody, because we accept that the only non-hackable database is no database at all. And then we simply tell the websites that users wish to visit yes or no in response to a question: is this user old enough to access our site? Some of the other criticisms you might hear of age verification are misplaced. So, for example, people say that the children will just use virtual private networks to pretend that they're not in your state. But this legislation and all the other legislation we've looked at doesn't have a get out of jail free card. If you somehow pretend you're in a different location, the law will apply to everybody in the state. And so it doesn't matter how they connect to the internet. And then cost is another point. It's often alleged that this is going to be very expensive for websites. The UK government published an impact assessment of its Online Safety Act, suggesting that the cost would be around 12 cents per check, and that they fully expected that figure to fall on the basis of competition and interoperability. And that's the final point I just mentioned. We are working on a system which allows you to prove your age to one website and then have that same age check be used across all the other websites you wish to access without you having to repeat the age verification process, which is obviously important from a user convenience perspective. So we think you have a very good piece of legislation in front of you, and I'm happy to take questions.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Committee, we also have proponent written only testimony in your committee documents from Katie Scarlett Calcutt, private citizen, Aaron Henniger, private citizen, and Eli Huber, Kansas State Director, Heritage Action for America. Are there any other proponent conferees wishing to testify? Not seeing any, then we will hear from neutral conferee Daniel Cochran, Senior Research Associate, Tech Policy Center, the Heritage Foundation. Please introduce yourself and welcome to committee.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair and members of the committee. My name is Daniel Cochran. I'm a Senior Research Associate with the Heritage Foundation. It is an honor to testify before you today on the merits of this bill to protect kids and minors online. I want to focus my testimony on three critical points. First, you will likely hear from opponents of this bill that the 25% threshold, the threshold that requires that the age verification requirement would apply to websites that have 25% or display web pages with 25% of pornographic material, that this apply to them. And they might likely say that this is unconstitutional. The reason that this is not unconstitutional is, first of all, because the bill clearly qualifies that requirement by saying knowingly shares or distributes material. All of the general social media platforms have already policies that generally prohibit this material. And this material is often not constitutionally protected at the same level as general political speech. In fact, this legislation is necessary because conventional approaches to user-side content filtering have proven woefully ineffective. According to one study in the United Kingdom, where age, or excuse me, one study in the United Kingdom, age verification was woefully inadequate, and they found that it had barely a 0.5% impact in preventing kids from accessing pornography online. In addition to this, we find that age verification is highly effective in preventing minors from accessing this content. And another study from the United Kingdom, where the United Kingdom applied age verification to activities such as gambling and access to alcohol, they found that the protective effects were generally 90% effective in preventing minors from accessing this content or accessing gambling, 91% effective in accessing lottery products, and 81% effective in accessing alcohol at convenience stores. In addition, and more to the point, the UK implemented age verification for online gambling platforms, and quote, they found that it effectively prevented illegal underage gambling online using a child's own details or invented identities. According to research from the United Kingdom Gambling Commission referenced in the report, quote, online gambling is experienced by fewer 11 to 16-year-olds than other forms of gambling. This is significant, and it's why age verification is a very effective measure in addressing harmful activities, especially objectionable content. In conclusion, the severity of the threat to children brought on by the tech-fueled porn epidemic necessitates action. Relying solely on filters is insufficient for addressing the harm to kids. Despite arguments to the contrary, age verification is both effective and possible to implement without surrendering privacy. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Committee, we skipped over the opportunity to entertain questions for our proponent conferees. So want to open it up for committee questions for our proponent conferees. Are there any? Yes, Senator Gossage, then Senator Steffen. And then we do have some.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I hate to address this to everyone and make you each feel like I'll go, you go. So let's just start with Brittany. Could you come up to the microphone?
And we will need to stop questioning at some point because we will need to hear from our opponents as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I'll try to make this quick. When I'm reading this bill and I'm reading the proponent testimonies, the one thing that I'm not understanding is how do they determine the age 18, that the individual's age 18? We all want to see pornography. We don't want to see children viewing pornography. We all want to protect those kids. But I'm trying to understand the onus is on them to do this. How do they do that? Do we know?
Are you talking about age verification?
Right.
Well,
Please go ahead and identify yourself.
Thank you. Thank you, Chairman Warren and the committee. My name is Brittany Jones, Kansas Family Voice. So age verification, and I'm not an age verification expert. There are several others that testified that can speak specifically to how that process works. But it's not just plugging in your driver's license anymore or a credit card. There's a host of ways that we age verify in Kansas already, whether that's through sports wagering, when you're buying alcohol online. We are already doing this in Kansas, and there are internationally recognized standards that pornographic websites would be required to meet in implementing their age verification technology.
Madam Chair, would it be okay if someone who does have knowledge of this, if they could come forward?
Sure, please. If there's a conferee who can more talk about the technology who's present, maybe on WebEx.
If I may, I might just give an example, Madam Chair.
Sure, please identify yourself.
Yes, ma'am. My name is Joseph Combe. I'm the Director of Public Policy at Family Policy Alliance. This is a great question and an important one. I just want to emphasize that the bill says in subsections 1 and 2 that this will be conducted by a commercially available database that is regularly used by business or government entities for the purpose of age verification. And it also allows for any other commercially reasonable method of age and identity verification. An example of that first subsection I just want to highlight is I'm a military veteran and I have benefits as part of my veteran status. One of the ways that I can take advantage of those benefits is on the VA's website. And every time I go to the VA's website, when I have to log into my account, exercise my benefits, what the VA's website does is sends me to a commercial third party, specifically a company called ID.me, which conducts an independent verification of my identity, which includes my age and my veteran status. Once that check is completed, ID.me reroutes me back to the VA's website. This use of a third-party program like that, there are many others available. ID.me is just one example, is exactly how this would work. Now, I'm an attorney. I'm not a tech person at heart, but to help answer the question, this is an example illustrative of how this would work, is that third-party service that checks my information, verifies I am who I am, and then in many aspects is required to destroy that information so the original site trying to be accessed, like the VA, doesn't see it. Now, the VA has my records other ways, but you get the point of the example. I just wanted to offer that as a helpful answer to the question. So thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Madam Chair. It just appears to me that and I can understand your example as a health insurance agent. I have clients that go in to see their benefits all the time and they have to prove who they are, right, to be able to do that. I understand the gambling example because you're going to take an action. I guess somebody just viewing something, I'm just trying to understand how that works. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Senator Steffen.
Thank you. And this most likely for Mr. Corby or Mr. Cochran, but anybody who would like to jump in is welcome. Clearly, there's good data showing the detrimental effect of exposing our youth to pornography. Then there's some, I think, fairly rudimentary data showing efficacy of blocking type of technology for gambling and such, but not access to pornography sites. Is there any data out there specifically that shows what kind of reduction in views we could expect on these pornography sites?
I'll step in if I may. Ian Corby from the Age Verification Providers Association. We analyze all of the different methods according to set levels of age assurance, and these are sort of levels of confidence that can be determined by a regulator. In this case, it would probably be the Attorney General, and they are written down in the international standards as to the percentage level of accuracy that you have to achieve. And that could be anything from 95% to 99.99%. Obviously, no system is 100% perfect, and anybody who claims that would not be telling the truth. But equally, we know that a barman serving a young person a drink quite often doesn't get the age verification right either. So with this technology, we're looking at being at least 99% or better successful at stopping children accessing this, and in particular, much younger children. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. If I may also address your question,
Please identify yourself first.
Sorry, Madam Chair. Daniel Cochran with the Heritage Foundation. Thank you. Senator, when this technology has been applied to other areas, so activities like gambling, purchasing tobacco products, alcohol, in the UK, it had a significant effect in preventing minors from accessing those things. Specifically, it had pass rates meaning the ability of preventing minors from accessing gambling 95% of the time, accessing lottery products 91% of the time, and purchasing alcohol at convenience stores 81% of the time. Moreover, finally, online gambling, when it was applied to online gambling, it has essentially eliminated that in the United Kingdom, according to the UK Gambling Commission. So we know from other areas this technology is effective, and it's something that can be relied upon to prevent minors from accessing pornography as well. Thank you.
So we're jumping from other activities to blocking pornography, which is, like Senator Gossage mentioned, is very different phenomena, gambling versus viewing a screen. So we really, the bottom line is we really don't have any hard data on the ability to reduce viewership by minors. Is that correct?
If I may jump in here. Sorry, Daniel.
No, go ahead.
I just wanted to jump in to add, Senator, this is Joseph Combe from Family Policy Alliance, that I mentioned in my testimony that the bill would help put parents back in charge of their kids' internet usage. That's because through these age verification methods that are industry standards, most of them children simply can't do without the help of a parent. And what that would effectively do, again, can't give you any hard data just yet, but what that would effectively do is require parents to consent to their children using a website like a Pornhub or an Xvideos. And I don't know about you, Senator, but I don't know many parents who would be up for that. So I would expect to see a very substantial drop in minor consumption of adult websites that include pornography from this. Thank you, Madam Chair.
And Daniel Cochran from the Heritage Foundation, just to add on to that, Pornhub already age verifies, I think, over 500,000 of its actors and users. So specifically actors appearing in its videos and users who upload or download certain content. So these platforms already have the means to do this. They just lack the incentive to do it on a wider scale.
Do you have one last question, Senator?
Yeah, one more quick question, please. Okay, looking in the fiscal note, they talk about needing one full-time equivalent, but it really doesn't get into any technology expenses. Is there no technology expenses, or is that just missing on the fiscal note?
Perhaps I could answer. Ian Corby from the Age Verification Providers Association. Most of our members offer these solutions as simple plugins to the most popular platforms on which websites are built. And that means it may be just a few clicks to actually configure access. And then you're just paying per check, or you might buy a bundle of checks. And obviously, if you're doing much higher volumes, the prices are heavily discounted as well. So it is a very simple technical integration for the vast majority of websites built on industry standard platforms. Thank you.
Daniel Cochran from the Heritage Foundation. So it costs Pornhub, I believe, 65 cents to do it once. 65 cents. So that's the actual cost, isn't it? It's very, very small, very insubstantial.
Okay. And again, my apologies for not knowing this bill inside and out. But is it the websites? Is it the pornographic websites' responsibility? Based on our statute, they become responsible to put a blocker in, or okay, perfect.
Brittany Jones, Kansas Family Voice. It's not the
Turn on your microphone, please, so we can hear you. Thanks.
Turned it on. Like,
okay.
Brittany Jones, Kansas Family Voice, in case I wasn't on the mic. Yes, it is the responsibility of the pornographic web or the websites to do this, not the responsibility of the state, the Attorney General. They just enforce it. And I think that is what the fiscal note is referring to, is the person to enforce it.
Thank you. Committee, are there other questions? Yes, Senator Baumgardner.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We see in opponent testimony this notion that it violates First Amendment, but I'm a little bit more interested in the notion of it de-incentivizes technological innovations to keep kids safe online. Are there really any innovations that are available that are keeping kids safe online? I'm thinking maybe not, but what about this whole de-incentivizing of innovations?
I think Mr. Corby has his hand raised on WebEx.
Yeah. Thank you, Ian Corby from the Age Verification Providers Association. We're seeing this debate around the world as everybody tries to pass the buck, the hot potato of who should be responsible for keeping children safe online. So some people say it should be the app stores. Some people say it should be the smartphone device manufacturers. The point is, it's the publishers who are the ones who are making the profits out of supplying this content. And therefore, we think that they have the primary responsibility for this. Filtering, for example, which was very much part of the previous constitutional challenges when it was decided that filtering was a less invasive way of protecting children, has been in operation for 20 years. And in those 20 years, we've seen the amount of pornography, the amount of channels through which children can access pornography grow exponentially. And the nature of that pornography has become much sort of nastier in many ways, more misogynistic and violent. So filtering certainly isn't a great solution, and that is one of the alternatives where I think those who are opposing this bill are suggesting we should move to filtering, or, as I say, passing the buck to others. But it's those who make the profits who should be primarily responsible for protecting children. Thank you.
Thank you. Committee, other questions? I have one. I think it was mentioned about the compelling state interest that this bill, were to become law, would help the state advocate for the compelling state interest to prevent minors from encountering material harmful to minors on the internet, which we have heard when that happens, if they encounter the harmful material, viewing this can lead to human trafficking, can lead to sexual abuse. So could I have just a short statement about the compelling state interest that this bill represents? Sure, if Brittany Jones wants to come up, and then I do have a second question if you'll stay at the podium then. Thank you.
Is this working? Okay, I wasn't sure. It was red before and it wasn't working. Brittany Jones, Kansas Family Voice. We strongly argue that there is a compelling state interest in this case. There are multiple Supreme Court cases talking about how it is the duty and the responsibility of the state to protect children from material that they don't have a constitutional right to. I don't think we've said that yet today. Children do not have a constitutional right to view this material. Adults may, courts have held that, but children do not. And so it is a compelling state interest to protect children in this case. And we do believe that this technology is now narrowly tailored to meet that end 20 years later as we see the technology develop.
Thank you. And my second question was regarding the 25%. Is that, there's some suggestion, I think, in other testimony that maybe it should be 33%. So what's the difference? And is it a material difference? 33% would be okay also, or could you please talk to that for a minute?
33% was a negotiated deal in several of the other states regarding this bill. It is not, courts have not discussed the 33% in their cases, in their rulings regarding those bills. There's been no designation of whether that's actually constitutionally viable or not. And it uses kind of odd language. It doesn't really make sense in a normal legal scope to say something is substantially material, or to use that substantial language when you're talking about something that's 33%. Legally is not normally how we would define that, but it was a negotiated political way of getting this bill across the line in other states. We believe in Kansas, we would like to be the forerunners on this issue and be the forerunners on helping these bills move forward to protect kids. We believe the 25% is a much more definable, it makes a lot more sense. Okay, if you're making a quarter of your business from exposing children to materials that are harmful to minors or obscenity, those sorts of things, that you should be protecting them from that content. And so it's a pretty simple, there's a pretty simple logic behind it, but I do recognize that that is how the other bills were written.
We talked a minute about online gambling, is the product, and we have age restrictions and verification there. And in this bill, the product is the view of the website. Is that correct? And that's why restricted access would be what this bill would do.
Correct. So, your product when you're gambling is the gambling website, the ability to gamble. The product when you're buying alcohol is the ability to buy alcohol or tobacco. You see similar age verification laws for different things that people can smoke, like tobacco and other products. So yes, the product is what you're viewing, but it is an addictive product that we are seeing across the country that children are being addicted to at a higher and higher level.
Thank you. And I think we had a response with a hand up online from Mr. Combe, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Mr. Combe, and then a question from Senator Steffen. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. Again, this is Joseph Combe from Family Policy Alliance. Just very briefly on the compelling state interest question. It's an important one for a state like this, and with the jurisprudence that's already in play here for an issue like this. So you all have my testimony. I'm not going to rehash that. I'll just add two things. One is that the reality is that of the sex industry, which comprises pornography and prostitution, the supply side of that industry is human trafficking. That is indisputable. And by allowing children to view pornography as the consumer, it pulls them into that illicit industry that profits off the slavery of human beings sexually. So that's part one. Part two that I want to add just very briefly is that there's plenty of other research out there that shows that consuming pornography is as harmful to your brain as an opioid. In fact, there's even brain scans showing a normal brain, a brain on heroin, and a brain watching pornography. And the two brains that are the same are the brain watching pornography and the brain on heroin. It's not harmful to minors and something the state has a compelling state interest in helping prevent, I don't know what is. So thank you for your time.
Thank you. And one last question for our proponents from Senator Steffen.
Thank you. I'm a little bit concerned in that the pursuit of a penalty flows through the Attorney General's office, who's already busy and struggling to hire people. And that's who we put the weight of pursuing fixing problems. Was there any thought ever given to opening this to a civil penalty where any consumer or anybody knowing or aware of a problem or a situation where access was gained could initiate the pursuit of a penalty?
Brittany Jones, Kansas Family Voice. Senator Steffen, that's a great question. There is a civil penalty in here. So a parent can sue on behalf of their minor child who received access to this technology or to pornography.
Independent of the Attorney General?
Yes, so they work together. One of the conversations that we had around this bill is the Attorney General has more resources to go after some of these companies than a family might have. But it's the belt and suspenders. So either one.
So this is a perfect example of great minds think alike, but one of y'all knows the bill and the other doesn't, right?
It's all good. I spent a lot of time with the bill, so.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And committee, want to draw your attention. We do also have neutral written only testimony from Ruthie Barco, Executive Director, Colorado and the Central U.S. TechNet. And with that, then we will hear from our, do we have any other neutral conferees wishing to testify? Okay, then we will hear from our opponent conferee, Justin Hill, on behalf of Carl Szabo from NetChoice. Please introduce yourself and welcome to committee.
Thank you, Madam. Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the committee. Justin Hill on behalf of NetChoice and Vice President General Counsel Carl Szabo. I'll give you a brief introduction of me, and then I'll try to address all of this that came up, because it's never fun being the person up here to appear to defend pornography, because that is awful. So I'm a former Missouri House member. I also ran the Conservative Caucus, a 42-member group in the Missouri House of Conservatives, and I also am a lifelong member of Heritage. And I'm a father of 4 boys. This is a tough issue. As a lawmaker, having grassroots and moms come into my office and say, "Representative, do you like pornography? Can you file a bill to just ban it?" And I had to first off, I had to say, no, I don't like pornography, and I would love to keep children from it. I keep my own children from it, but I love the Constitution. I've sworn to uphold the First Amendment of the Constitution. That is our priority. Of course, we have to protect children, but all of us take that oath to defend the Constitution first. In, I think it was 1996, there was a Supreme Court case, it was 9-0, that struck down the Communications Decency Act. That was a long time ago. Back then, they said the government couldn't put ID verification in front of information, because the internet is amazing. It's a place where free information can be shared anonymously. And by the government installing an ID requirement, we are cooling speech. Even the worst speech is protected speech. Well, that was a 9-0 opinion. And a lot has changed in 24 years, but the Constitution has not. And I think we're here today, not because the government has failed to act, but it's because parents have failed to act. It is more and more difficult to parent in this day and age when we send them out of the house with a cell phone and have access to all this information, where we need to be the ones controlling the information that is in front of our children. So as a parent, I downloaded an application on all of my children's devices that allows me to monitor what they're accessing, what they're sending in text, who they're calling. And it actually worked. I have a son that's 17. I have a 15-year-old, 12-year-old. So they're getting into that age of curiosity. And without naming one of my children, I did stumble across a web search that occurred. And I was caught off guard. I mean, it's really, it forces you to parent, believe me. And I was able to have a conversation with my child about the damages that porn does to a mind. So I'm not here to defend pornography at all. But by having that conversation, my son is better for it. He has a better understanding. And it kept me engaged in my children's lives. Especially in an area, because they know more than me. I mean, I thought I'm pretty tech savvy. My children are learning at a much faster pace. They actually understand what a VPN is now. There's apps out there now that are just directly dialing into VPNs. There's just so much out there that I can't keep up to speed with. But I have applications that can. So while we don't oppose the idea. In fact, I presented in our packet some minor changes that would make this a successful bill, because a bill that's unconstitutional doesn't save a single child. Because I guarantee Pornhub will be here to sue to stop this bill. They don't want to have to do age verification, but you know what happened in the states where this bill was presented and it was amended to include what we have provided, the 33 1/3% substantial portion, carving out media. What happened in those states? When states made these adjustments, Pornhub either left or they put a wall up saying you have to verify your identity. So I know Kansans love, they have an interest in protecting children online. They do. But I don't know how good they feel about providing their ID to a company in Europe where they don't have to follow Kansas law once that ID leaves the US. So I have a few privacy concerns as an individual on that. But I'll leave you with this. You know, whenever grocery stores started selling alcohol, we didn't card them at the door because there's alcohol inside. We card people whenever they take alcohol to the checkout counter. And a blanket age verification that pulls in all of these platforms with such a low threshold, rather than a prescribed method to only go after the producers of this content, that would be akin to asking for ID at the door. So let's put it on these producers, not the internet by in large. Thank you, committee.
Thank you. Committee, you'll also see written only testimony from opponent John Idu from Kansas Governmental Affairs Director, or he is the Kansas Governmental Affairs Director for Brightspeed. Are there any other opponent conferees wishing to testify? Not seeing any, then we will go ahead and open it up for questions for Mr. Hill. Yes, Senator Gossage.
Thank you for being here. As I'm looking through, and this in your testimony, it's red.
Yes, ma'am.
It's what you would add or delete. As I'm looking through this, is there anything that would say that they don't have to have the age verification? Are you still saying they should have the age verification?
Age verification on the porn producers
Mm-hmm.
is in effect today in the states that did do this bill with amendments. They are currently using it, yes. In some states, they just decided they don't want to do the age verification and they left. Great.
So the age verification portion would still be in this bill. You're not removing that age verification.
Correct. So the amendments just addressed how broad you're defining it, because the Supreme Court ruled because it was so overly broad. So by changing the percentage, you get to narrowly tailor it to the producers themselves.
And I noticed that you had stricken in the beginning the 25%, but it is replaced with a substantial portion. Would that hold up, the terms substantial portion?
Now, I'm not an attorney. I only played one in the Missouri Legislature for about a little longer than 7 years. But that's kind of a legal term that several parties came up with whenever this bill started floating around the country. So substantial portion is defined below, and that is what has been tested and has held up.
And so the substantial portion, and by definition, is the 33 and a third.
%.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Senator.
Thank you. Regarding your other substantive amendment, you propose to exclude from the bill news gathering organizations. Could you talk about that for a minute?
Yes. So you're inviting more challenges if you include news organizations. Because
more challenges meaning more lawsuits, and
correct,
whether it's
correct.
constitutional.
So really, that's a courtesy amendment to more, grab less opponents, right? Them and ISPs tend to monitor this kind of legislation closely across the country.
Have these amendments been included in legislation in other states?
Yes, ma'am.
Has it precluded the lawsuits that you're talking about?
Yes.
Okay, I'm uncertain about that, but are there any other questions for our opponent, conferee? Yes, Senator Haley.
And thank you for being here today. The other written opposition request.
Can you make sure you speak into your
Yeah,
microphone so everyone can hear you?
Yep.
Thanks.
The only written one we got from a Brightspeed suggested that a partial would be the exclusion of internet providers as well. Doesn't that kind of, along with, again, the chair's question, these carve-outs or exclusions, would that have a feasible solution? I understand we can't really find the internet pro. They could be incorporated or be some foreign jurisdiction. Would that be, even though that's not your testimony, do you think that that's going to partially resolve the broader issue that you oppose?
Thank you, Senator. My understanding that ISPs are just providing the network to where content can be posted and shared. So by carving them, they really don't have a horse in this fight, right? Or dog in this fight, sorry.
Well, they're the conduit. I mean, they arguably the conduit for the content that's there. I mean, but I just don't know how. And again, it's not your testimony per se directly, but it is
correct.
the other opponents. And
yeah, this language here that we're including the ISPs is what's been adopted all across the country.
Okay, thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, committee. Other questions? Senator Gossage.
I'm sorry. Thank you, Madam Chair. I just had one more. I had asked the proponents about age verification. And again, I'm just asking because I'm just ignorant of this. I just don't know what's available. I can understand if you're taking an action, I'm going to buy something or I'm going to gamble or whatever. Is there data out there, or is there a product out there that someone can purchase? I think the gentleman mentioned when he goes in, he mentioned a site that he can go to and it'll verify who he is. So is it out there where they can just use this and pay for that now? Because I see you haven't stricken that from your recommendation.
No, I know there are third parties out there.
Mm-hmm.
Is there something that I can buy for myself to say, no, look, I'm verified online? I don't believe so, because by and large, the internet needs to be a place of protected speech, anonymous speech. And I think there's really not a movement that direction, but there is a movement to age verification for adult products, right? But when you blanket it across the internet, that's where you run into free speech issues.
So then if I'm understanding this correctly, and my last question, Madam Chair, is that if we have a site, and again, not at all a fan of pornography, the absolute opposite of that. If they have this and it's 33% of this has pornographic information in there. And so then it would be basically anyone who would go to this site, then anyone would have to have a third party verification system that if it's like a gatekeeper. I say, I want to view this information and say, sorry, you need to go here, register, so that we can prove your age.
Correct.
Could that be faked? Could a 12-year-old go
No,
on
because
there?
the third party would own that platform, right?
Okay.
So the person that wants to consume the material would then be sent to that third party. Verification would happen via Kansas driver's license, maybe. A lot of them are told they have to delete the information, but again, we don't know where that information's going. We can only enforce what occurs in Kansas, right? And then once that occurs, then I believe they attach it to that the ISP number, the address of that user. But then there's no telling who's holding that device after that verification's done. And I know they said, well, there's facial recognition, but then we're getting into really, really kind of scary stuff, right? Do I want my child's face in a recognition system, right? Or do I want my face in a recognition system? So, yeah.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. In your proposed amendments, you haven't really struck anything from the bill. You have changed the definition of how much of the material on the website has to be harmful to minors to be subject to this bill. You've changed that from 25% to 33 1/3, and then also a exception for news gathering organizations and for internet service providers. And I think you've answered why that is.
And that brings it in line with like Arkansas, where it was challenged and blocked and now in effect because of those changes.
It was challenged without these changes, and then once these changes were made, it survived the court challenge. Okay, thank you. Committee, any further questions? And you agree that the bill serves a compelling state interest to protect minors from viewing harmful material on the web?
I can't agree on that, but what I can say is we have a compelling interest to protect the Constitution of the United States. The compelling state interest for protecting children online, I don't think that has been litigated, for lack of a better term. I don't think that's been tested. But I do know that if you do look up the Communications Decency Act, it was a strong signal by the Supreme Court, 9-0, stating that cooling speech for adults was not okay, essentially.
But this is regarding minors, so it's...
I'm with you that, but in order to protect minors, you have to put adults through that activity.
Thank you. Committee, with that then, we will close the hearing on Senate Bill 394. And it's 11:33. So with that then, we will be adjourned.